I'm sorry, 439. 439. Okay, so we have some evidence so far that we've used to answer the guiding question, could World War II have been prevented? We know that we have a lot more events that are going to happen that we need to analyze and decide, are these things that could have helped prevent World War II or not? And so as we're starting to read about these events and how they unfold, what we're really doing is we're reading to look for cause and effect. And as you're in history class, you know that reading informational text and figuring out, okay, what happened and what caused that and then what was the effect of that, that's a key skill. And so what I'm going to do is walk you through how you're going to do that in this note-taking activity and with this part of the textbook. Okay, so I'm going to take you through that process step by step and let you know how I go about the process of thinking this through and looking for cause and effect. And then I'm going to have you practice it a little bit, and then we'll practice it in some groups. So first thing, we're going to start on 439. And I know that as I'm reading for cause and effect, I thought about what do I do as a reader? If I know that I'm looking for a bunch of events and I want to see what their effects were, here's how I do it. So I made a list up here that we can reference. And it's just a guide. It kind of guides my thought process as I read. And so I'm sharing it with you, and then we're going to practice using it together. So it says reading for cause and effect. The first step, I'm just going to follow these things step by step, is I'm always going to read the headings. I know in this textbook, as with most informational text, the headings contain so much helpful information to let me know what I should be looking for. So it says, the heading on 34.3, military aggression meets a weak response. Okay? Before we go any further, I suppose we put this outline of how we're going to take our notes in your notebook yesterday. So this is really a timeline of events so that we can keep things in order. And on one side, we're looking at the actions and describing what action took place. And generally, there are aggressive actions. And then we're looking at what was the reaction. That's really just another way, when I think about that, that's just another way of saying what was the cause and then what was the effect. And so I read the heading, since I know it's something that a lot of times people just kind of skip over and go straight to the text. I'm not going to do that. It says military aggression meets a weak response. That tells me right away that everything I see in my reactions or in the effects of the aggressive actions are going to be weak responses. And that doesn't surprise me because I think back to what we've already seen, and there's been weak responses to every aggressive action. Okay, so by this point, I really don't think you need to be on your Chromebooks anymore because you have that already. So what I should see are your books open to 439 and your notebooks out. Otherwise, Chromebooks shut. This is going to be important that you follow along as I do this. Okay, so back to what I'm doing here for my steps. First thing I did, I just read the heading. So I thought about that heading and I thought about how it connected to what I already know about some of these actions of these aggressive dictators and how there's weak responses of the League of Nations or Neville Chamberlain and appeasement. I know we just talked about those things, so I bet that's going to be the norm of all of these reactions throughout. I'm going to skip down to militarists. 439. I'm going to skip down to militarists expand Japan's empire. So as I think about that heading, I think about that this is going to start talking about Japan. I look at my timeline and I notice that, well, it's not in order, so I'm going to scroll down on my notes. And I'm guessing that since this is talking about Japan first, and this is the first time I see Japan on the timeline, I'm probably looking for this event. The next question that I'm going to consider as I read this text was what action was taken in this paragraph and by whom. So I read the heading, I thought about the heading, now I know I'm looking for something that is an action and I want to see who did it. I want to also look for what the reaction was, that's step 3. What reaction occurred as a response to this action, by whom. When I finish a paragraph, I'm going to ask myself, how am I going to sum this up? How would I sum this paragraph up so that I can go to step 5 and think, what do I think is going to happen next? So I'm constantly summarizing and I'm constantly predicting. Okay, so I'm starting, if you look on 439 in the middle, militarists expand Japan's empire. Right away I think about, oh, imperialism. I know they have a dictator. I know what we just learned before about Tojo and the militarism. So it doesn't surprise me that they're going to do some stuff that's aggressive. One of the first examples, so now if you just follow along. One of the first examples of blatant aggression came in 1931. So that's way back. That's even before this timeline starts. When Japan seized a portion of China. Anytime I'm reading about places, I'm pretty sure that the text is going to provide me some support for that. Sure enough, I look down below, there's a map. So I'm going to just locate and remind myself, okay, there's China, there's Japan. I'm going to do that throughout. Japan and other imperialist powers had previously established spheres of influence in China. I don't know what that means, spheres of influence. I notice there's a comma though, and I'm comfortable because I know this text explains things. After it says some complicated term, it'll probably tell me, but I'm going to think about what I think that means. A sphere of influence, a place that they might want to try to control is my guess. So I'll see how that matches up with what the text says. Where they exploited the country's land and resources. So it's where they're trying to use it. If I exploit somebody, I know that means that I use them. If I make you take me in your car every day and I never pay you any gas money to get you to school, I'm exploiting you. I'm exploiting your car. Japan's sphere of influence, so the area they were using, was Manchuria, a region in northeastern China. Okay? It helps me to have a mental map, but I can rely on what's here too. So I look, Japan, oh, there's Manchuria right next to it. Would you put your finger on Manchuria? When China's nationalist government threatened to expel foreign powers, the Japanese army invaded Manchuria and took control of the region. Okay, so China's nationalist government didn't like it. That's how I'm kind of thinking back through that sentence. And the Japanese army invaded Manchuria and took control. I'm going to go back to my questions that I'm always going to ask when I'm reading for cause and effect. I read the heading, what action was taken in this paragraph, by whom? So I'm looking for something that was aggressive. Well, Japan was carving out a part of China that they wanted, and Japan's sphere of influence was China's nationalist government threatened to expel foreign powers. It's not really doing anything. The Japanese army invaded Manchuria and took control of the region. Okay, that's an action. Okay, so in my mind I'm thinking, what action was taken in this paragraph? Japan invaded Manchuria. I've got the by whom. I know who did it. What reaction occurred as a response to this action? I don't know yet, and that's okay. I don't think it said that. I'm going to skim back through. China had threatened to expel them, but then Japan invaded Manchuria and took control. Nobody did anything so far, but I know I should keep reading. So how would I sum this paragraph up? I go back, I look at the topic sentence, one of the first examples, blatant aggression. Okay, I know Japan invaded Manchuria. Done. What do I predict, or what do I think is going to happen next? Well, I bet the next thing they'll talk about is what did China do as a result of that, or how else. I used the heading to give me a clue. Militarists expand Japan's empire. I bet that's not all. I bet we're going to see more examples of Japanese expansion. I don't have anything to put in my notes yet because it doesn't fit with my timeline. But you can see how this is not a quick process. As I read this, it's new information for me. I have to be careful and really pay attention. Okay, so what am I doing next paragraph? I remember what the heading says. This is all about Japanese expansion, so I'm going to continue.